Okay, welcome back, or just welcome if you've not seen one of my tutorials before. This is Carp Rigs Made Simple, in which we go through a step-by-step guide into making a rig, and we turn what are perceived as very difficult rigs to make into very easy rigs to make, following the single steps. Just before we proceed, guys, a little bit of admin. I really would appreciate it if you did subscribe. It just helps the channel along a little bit. If you press the bell icon, you'll get these videos as soon as they're uploaded. I'm doing them all of the time, so you won't miss any. And it helps you create great rigs very simply and very easily. Okay, let's move on then to making the rig. So today we're looking at the hinged stiff rig, but it will also be exactly the same for a chod rig, because we make a chod section, then add a boom to create the hinged stiff rig. As with all chods, we need a very stiff material. And in this case I'm using the Rigmarole Cam H2O in 25 pound. It's a very stiff fluorocarbon. You'll see me use this in a lot of the rigs. It has a fantastic property whereby you can actually stretch the material once you've completed the rig, and it goes completely straight. So that's fantastic for when you bring rigs in after you've been using them for a while. They've got some kinks in, etc. You can just put them in a puller tool, pull them straight, and it will be you'll have a perfectly straight hook link again, and I'll show you that as we go through. So don't panic if the rig looks or the material looks kinked at any time. That quickly straightens out at the end. Okay, so I'm going to pull off around about 8 inches of this Cam H2O in 25 pound here. Snip it off. And at this stage I'm just going to give it a little stretch. So I generally give this a stretch because, as I said, you will get stretch in this material, and we don't want that happening. Once we've measured up the hook link section perfectly, we pull it tight just to straighten it out, and obviously it stretches and makes the section longer. So I'm just going to do that now. Okay, I've just given it a little stretch in my teeth. Okay, and that's nicely now stretched out. So what we need for this rig is a hook with a outturned eye. So I'm just using here, for the purposes of this demonstration, an old Rigmarole prototype hook here, but whatever hook design you use, it has to have an outturned eye. It's absolutely critical, or this rig won't work. Okay. And what we're simply going to do, as with a lot of rigs, believe it or not, they all start off life with a knotless knot. So I'm just going to place this little fluorocarbon hook link section through the back of the eye, slide it down, and I'm going to give myself what, for all intents and purposes, would be a hair, around about 1 inch there. And as usual, I'm just going to pinch that hair and the hook together, and grabbing hold of the main hook link section, I'm just going to wrap this round, and I like to go around 6 times. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what I'm going to do is take the end of this hook link section, place it through the back of the eye, so coming from the back of the eye towards the point of the hook, pull it through and just pull it tight. And now all I've done is created a knotless knot. Now, I mentioned I like 6 turns here. That basically decides how big your D is. I like quite a small D, which I'll show you in a second. You can go down as many turns as you like, depending on how big you like the D, but I like quite a small D right down by the eye here. It seems to be more effective for me, but again, it's personal choice. But that's the end of the first section, basically a knotless knot. Okay, section 2. So now what we're going to do is create this little loop that I've been talking about, and we're going to do that by using a bait screw. Now you can use just a rig ring, personal preference again. I prefer the bait screw. If you're at all worried about these like I was many years ago when I first used them, I have cast these well in excess of 100 yards, full force in all conditions, all different types of pop-ups, and I have never ever had one come off. So they're absolutely safe if you're at all worried about them. But as I said, you have got the option of using dental floss and just a normal rig ring should you prefer. Okay, so we're going to take this bait screw and we're going to use the ring or rig ring, whichever you prefer, and just place it over the what would have been the hair section. Yeah, so you can just see that sliding about there. Now what we're going to do is be bringing this hair section back through the eye, and the problem we have at this stage is this material has already been through this eye a couple of times, and depending on the make of the hook, sometimes these eyes can be quite small. So in order for us to make things life as simple as possible, I just cut a little angle on the end of the hook link section like so, and just make that a bit of a point. And looking at that section, I also grab hold of the main hook link part and I then pull that down out of the way towards the eye towards the sort of point of the hook, and sort of open up this eye section. And what I'm going to do is take this little bit of tag, yeah, and I'm just going to pop that through the eye. See if I can do that. Let's get this out of the way. As you see, it's not always as simple as it looks. There we go. It just pops through. Okay, which is great. The sort of the little D already, yeah. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that right down and close that D right up, and I'll show you why now. So holding all the material away and just leaving this tag end, I'm just going to snip this off around about 1 centimetre away. And away there it goes. So I've now got that little bit of a tag. Now what I'm going to do is, you've heard this a million times, is I'm using a lighter, I'm going to blob this down, and what that means is basically setting fire to the fluorocarbon, and that will run down as it burns. And what I want to do is leave myself 2 or 3 mil before it gets to the end. So this will generally sort of set on fire, and as the flame runs down, I blow it out, wet my finger and just blob the end, yeah, and that creates the stop for it, stops it going back through the eye. Okay, so if you watch this carefully, I set it on fire, it wants to run down, blow it out 2 inches for the end, wet my finger, touch it, and it's created a little blob. Okay, now where we pulled this eye down, this loop down, it was closed, but now the few inches I'll now pull back through the eye, and I use the little ring to sort of run that round and just create nice flexible D. You can put a sort of like a bait needle in, etc., and just sort of shape it round, but basically this is just as effective. So I've created a nice little D for myself there. I don't like a massive great D, some people prefer it much bigger, but again it's pure personal choice. But as you use the rig and practice with it, you'll decide what's best for you. But yeah, that's it, simple. So I've created my little D on the back of the hook, as simple as that. You can see that there, perfect. And my little bait screw for attaching my bait. And that's the end of that section. Okay, now we've got our hook link section for our hinge stiff finished. We can now create what would be the chod, and all we're simply going to do is introduce a ring swivel like so. It's a size 8 ring swivel. Now the critical part of this is that this is beautifully free running, so don't buy rubbish. Make sure you buy quality ring swivels that have lots of free movement. It's the key to this rig. the final chod section, you should be able to touch it from either side when it's done, and it should turn so that whichever way the fish comes to it and touches it, if it comes the opposite way around, it will turn the hook towards the bottom lip. That's the whole point of the chod. Okay, so what we're going to do is place the ring swivel onto this hook link section we've created, see it just sliding on there. Okay, and we're going to place it the opposite end to the ring, because the ring is going to stay on our main line, and that will be what slides along and creates the chod. Now, it's personal choice. A lot of guys, when they fish the actual chod rig itself, would like 2 or 3 inches of height on their chod. Don't forget, you've got to factor in the curve once we put that in. But for a hinge stiff, which is what we're tying at the moment, I prefer around about 1 inch. Now, once again, I always talk about accuracy. I always measure this. So I measure from 1 inch from the bottom of the hook. And what I'll do is I'll hold the ring swivel in place. So I've got 1 inch exactly. I'll take that out of the way. And then what I'm going to do is simply hold the swivel and just bend the line over, yeah, and pinch it. So what I've effectively created there is just a small V in the line, yep, which will just help with accuracy in terms of when I go to tie this. Okay, now this is going to be difficult to show you this, but an excellent little tip for you guys when you're tying small sections like this, very fiddly. It's only going to be a 2-turn blood knot, which, believe me, is more than sufficient to stand up to anything you're likely to encounter with this rig. The little tip is here to make things easier is I always put a lead on the hook and I hang it upside down. Now, it's difficult to show you this, but what that will do is create tension on the bottom of the hook link section and allow me to pass this line around twice quite easily and keeping it tight. So I'm going to toss it once, twice, yeah, and what that's allowed me to do is keep that very tight. So now I can remove that lead, go up to where I've done my turns, and I can just put the hook link back through the little loop that I've created. So just a 2-turn blood knot, very simple. And that's it. So what I'm going to now do is just tease that knot down a bit and then use my puller tools as always just to pull things straight. So I'll have one on each end. I'll put one in the loop of the swivel and one around the hook. Yep, and I'm just going to give it a squeeze. Don't get crazy, just tease it down, make sure that knot beds nicely. I'm going to use my mouth just to pull the tag end there, but that's it, perfect. So now that's nicely bedded down, I'm happy with it. I'm going to just snip off the excess as you would with all knots. Give myself a few mil, and then whilst once again protecting the bulk of the rig, I'm going to just blob this down. So just set it on fire, let it run down, blow it out, and then just touch it down, and that's nicely blobbed down. So at this point, again talking about neatness, accuracy, just turn the rig round, just have a little look at it, make sure that everything's nice and neat, everything's straight. Yeah, don't want it to stick it off to an angle, want this all beautifully straight. We want it running exactly straight up through the shank of the hook. Don't want it all bent off and twisted. Definitely worth checking at this stage. Okay, now we're sure it's nice and neat. Now we want to put the curve in our chod. Okay, now there's a number of options here. I chose this material, as I said, because it was very pliable. What you can do with this material is actually do it with your fingers. You could introduce something like this, which is the solar rig cone, and here you would, there's a slot here, and you basically place your hook in the slot, and there's grooves that go around, and you would hold it round, and once you've got the main hook link attached, then you'd steam it. Okay, and that gives you that curve. As I said though, with this material, the beauty of this is you can do it on the bank. You don't need to steam, you don't need to add extra danger. You just literally pinch it between your thumb and forefinger, or I generally prefer the middle finger there, and you just run it through around the top of your thumb, and you just create that natural curve. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And there is a beautiful chod section. Okay, so we're now going to add the boom or hook link section to our chods to create the hinged stiff rig. And this really depends, I suppose, on the substrate that you're fishing over, what the bottom of the lake is like. If it's a nice and clear bottom, I'll tend to use a stiffer material like this 20-pound rigmarole Cam H2O. If there's a little bit of chod on the bottom, just a small bit, I might drop down to the 15-pound just to give myself a little bit more flexibility to get over sticks and small bits of chod, etc. And if it's really choddy, I may even go to what we call the reverse hinge stiff, where I would use a sort of stiff coated braid, which allow me to sit over lots of choddy areas, etc., but still maintain the chod section. For this example, we're going to use the 20-pound Cam H2O. So what I'm going to do is pull off around about 12 inches of material. Again, I'm going to make the rig around about 7 inches. I do fish this particular rig anything up to around 14 inches abroad. I've done a few videos on this online called Big Booms, Big Fish, basically where I fish this rig, but as I say, around about 14 inches, and that's with big fish with big bellies where they're tipping down, gives them basically more rope to hang themselves. But anyway, back to the rig. What I'm going to do is just stretch this this material out as I normally do. Just take a little bit of the stretch out at this stage. There we go, and then we'll move on. Okay, what I'm going to do next is take our chod section, and I'm going to run the boom section through the big eye. Give yourself plenty here, give yourself 2 or 3 inches here, because that's the reason we pull off so much in the first place, to allow these knots to be simpler. And all I'm just going to do is pinch that. So once again, I just created a V, and I'm just going to do what for all intents and purposes at this stage is an overhand loop knot. So I create a loop there. So I have my main boom section of my tag end, and normally that would go through the loop, through the face of the loop, and we would create our overhand knot. But what I'm going to do here is against the turn, so where I've gone over, I'm going to twist this loop 180 degrees, just the once. Yeah, that's all I've done, is twisted it 180 degrees. Yeah, and then go through with our main boom section and our tag end. So it's exactly the same as an overhand knot, but all I've done is twisted that once. Now, if you can see, hopefully the camera can pick this up, I've created a figure of 8, and that's why it's called the figure of 8 knot. So we're going to now just tease this down, and before we pull it tight, I'm going to place in the loop one of my puller tools, and I'm going to use this section here, this fat section, to make a nice round loop so that it's all nice and neat once it's tightened up. So I'll pull that right over the fat, and then I'll just pull it tight. And once again, using my mouth, I'm just going to pull the tag ends, yeah, but we just pulled that nice and tight, and what we now have is a neat loop on the other end. Yeah, nice open loop. And again, we'll neaten that up at the end of the rig. So now we're just going to nip off this tag end. Again, give yourself a few inches. With your lighter, just plop it down, let it burn, blow it out, just tag it off, and there we go. Now, the reason we do this figure of eight, is, as you can see there, hopefully, it comes out beautifully straight from the knot. Yeah, when you do an overhand loop knot, it tends to sort of just kink to the side like that. But the figure of eight allows the main boom section to exit beautifully from the knot, and you get a lovely straight hook link section. And you'll see that once we finally straighten all the rig out. Okay, so that's our boom end, and the reason I do a loop is that, again, it's all about movement. There's so much movement now in this rig, and that's what I like to create. Some people like to tie it direct, just a knot direct to the loop. I actually like to create a loop to increase the movement, but it's personal choice. You can, of course, crimp. If you've got the crimping tools and you're proficient at it, absolutely, you can crimp at this stage. But again, it's personal choice, and I've given you the option here. Okay, we move to the other ends. Now what we're going to do, accuracy, is bring in our rig safe. Now I'm going to place on the end at this stage a rigmarole long rig sleeve, and as with all of the rigs, I'm going to put, remember I'm just measuring the boom section here, so I'm going to put the base of the big eye of the swivel one end. I'm going to run the line so I get to 7 inches here, the end of my sleeve. I'm going to grab the line at the back of the sleeve, pull the sleeve away, and then fold that over. And all I need to do here is an overhand loop knot. You can do a figure of eight should you wish, but there's no need, because this is going to be hidden underneath the sleeve. So all we're doing is just a straight overhand loop knot, and we'll just give that a little tug. Once again, I'll pull the tag in to my mouth, okay, and we'll just snip off the excess. So I've just created a little overhand loop knot. Okay, I'll now bring my sleeve back to this end. I'll pull it over the knot and just leave the eye. So what that now allows me to do, to finish the rig off, is to have the loop in one end, and then again I push my puller tool, fat section, into the loop there, and I just give it a pull. Give it a good pull. Take that off carefully, and now as you can see I have a perfect boom section, stiff boom section which I can move, and a beautiful chod section with incredible movement. All that's left is to put a blade on. The Hinged Rig.